Welcome to Smackie's Garage. Today we're going to be talking about everything that's gone wrong with my car in the past year. If you don't know this, I have a 1969 Mustang and I've been driving it consistently every single weekend as I should be to enjoy it throughout the entire spring, summer, and fall. Now, while I've been doing this, things have gone wrong while I've been using the car. Now, these aren't things that are going to be expensive to fix, but they're issues that have arisen while I've been driving it. So what I want to cover in this video is kind of classic car ownership in the period of the last year, exactly what has gone wrong in my vehicle and what else I need to fix this winter. You've seen that I'm planning on modifications of the car this winter to add different rear end gears to it, to make some modifications in the interior, to put a stereo system in it. But what I didn't cover is things that went wrong and what I'm actually going to be fixing behind the scenes on the car. This will kind of give you a look into classic car ownership and what are some of the things that happen. Things come loose, sometimes wires pop out. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at everything that has gone wrong. Let me know down in the comments what went wrong with your car this year, because I'm interested to hear. Is this just me that these are happening to, or is it happening to other people as well? Now, one of the first things that went wrong with the car, up here we have to go through yearly car inspections where they check your suspension, make sure your car is not puffing a ton of smoke, and they make sure overall car's in decent shape for the road. Now, when I was on my way out there, what actually happened is I was driving down the road and all of a sudden the engine started sputtering a little bit and kicking out. You know, from my experience, I knew it wasn't fuel related, because if it was fuel related, I'd probably see a little bit of the RPMs increasing, the engine going a little bit lean, but I didn't know what was wrong. So I ended up pulling over, looking at the car, kind of getting it out of the way so that I was out of the way of traffic, and looking through the engine bay. While looking through the engine bay, I checked the fuel, make sure nothing was leaking. I had fuel pressure, but when I was following the wires to the ignition system, what I actually found was one of the ignition wires had popped off and needed to be kind of reinstalled. Unfortunately, the car is 210 degrees and I was using an UV glove, which I just randomly had in the back of the car, probably because I was working on it when it was hot. I was able to crimp that connection back so that I could actually get the car all the way to the inspection station, work well, had it back home. Now, one of the things I could have done to prevent this, and what I'm going to do over the winter, is I'm actually going to clean up a lot of the wiring. On our MSD system in this car, one of the things you're probably going to notice is, you know, the wiring don't use the best splices. The wiring's kind of all over the place. I installed it pretty quickly, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to clean up some of that wiring. You know, the entire engine bay in general needs to be cleaned up. I still have the choke wires on there. The MSD ignition wire needs to be cleaned up. So we're going to take care of all that. But that was the first thing that actually went wrong this year with the car. The next thing that went wrong with the car is my wife and I were doing a cruise out here. It was about a 60-mile cruise, which means I went through about a half a tank of gas probably. And this cruise was nice. It was probably the longest cruise I've actually ever done in the car, which 60 miles, which is kind of crazy. I don't really take it that far, but I like to just drive it around the area. So we're on the cruise, we're cruising kind of to our first stop, and one of the things that I noticed is the hood pin was a little bit high. It looked weird. I didn't know exactly what was going on when I was driving it, but there was something definitely out of place. When we pulled the car over, I took a look at the hood pin. I tried pulling it up, and the hood pin actually, I didn't have to unclip it. I just pulled the hood pin up and I was able to completely remove it. The nut on the bottom had fallen off because of the vibrations. Now, those of you that have classic cars, you probably know that with these classic cars, they vibrate a lot. You're not talking about a Mercedes, an Audi. You're talking about an old muscle car that vibrates with the exhaust. The engine's moving back and forth constantly. You're gonna have things that vibrate over time. You know, this obviously wasn't tightened well enough. There wasn't a lock nut on it, but it still fell off. So luckily I was able to get home. The other hood pin was still in place. So actually this one's loose, so I need to tighten that one too. So I was able to get home and get the older one back on that I had on the car so that I could use it until I got some new hardware. Go through the car every year, make sure your bolts and nuts are tightened and nothing's gonna fall off, especially anything that's critical on the car. The other item that happened kind of on our cruise is we noticed that there was a lot of vibration coming from the dash. What actually had happened is some of the dash screws came loose. The Phillips heads that hold the radio trim in place, I've removed them and reinstalled them a few times this year. I must not have fully retightened it back, but that part was really vibrating that we could hear, and it was really annoying throughout the whole trip. So not only did the nut come off on the front for the hood pin, but one of the screws on the dash came out and was causing a lot of vibrations inside the car. And it was very annoying for a 60-mile, 3-hour drive. Now, one of the other things that went wrong this year while I was out driving the car is, it didn't really go wrong, but it's more of a nuance with an older car. With when they start getting hot, if the radiator starts overpressuring it all, then it's going to dump some coolant onto the ground, which is why they have that hose that comes off of the radiator under the cap and directly to the ground. That was happening a little bit, and I was noticing the car was getting a little bit hotter. So it's something that I need to address this year. It's something that's a little bit more common with these classic cars, especially if they're going to be running hotter. What I need to do, and which I'm doing this year, is I'm installing a coolant tank, which by now that video should be up. One of the things I'm going to do to actually remedy this is I'm going to end up replacing the thermostat, replacing some of the gaskets. I think I'm actually going to drill a hole in the thermostat too. By drilling a hole in the thermostat, you can actually let a little bit of coolant through, even when it's not open, just to make sure that there's no air locked in there so that the car is running okay. So we are definitely going to end up doing that to make sure that the car is not getting hot at all. And that's one of the things that I'll report on kind of results in the springtime of, with these changes, how did the car react to it? Now, one of the other things that happened is the bulbs went on the passenger side door. With these older cars, you're running more halogen bulbs. You're not running what you see in newer cars with LED bulbs that are going to last years and years, that'll essentially last forever, or are supposed to last forever. Apparently some of them don't, they overheat and get fried. The other story that we can cover at a later time. But these bulbs do go bad, so every once in a while you have to walk around the car, check to make sure all your lights are on, that there aren't any issues. You could see some grounding issues where some ground straps fall off and then some of the lights start to flicker. So the things that you need to check around that. But I actually had some of the bulbs go dead in the door, so I need to replace those just so that we have light on the interior. I'm also missing the bulbs that are under the dash, so those need to get replaced too. Those bulbs are long gone and they're not working anymore. All right, so that's a list of things that went wrong this year. I don't think I'm missing anything else, but if I am, I'm sure I'll put it in the community section. But, overall, it's been a good year with the car. I've been really enjoying it. It's nice to have it out and around and cruising. I'm sure as we start racing the car a little bit and driving a little bit harder, maybe some other things will go wrong with it. I think I built everything up to be pretty robust, other than the wiring. I really need to fix some of that wiring. So that's it. Thanks for tuning in to Smackie's Garage. I'll see you next time.